The Salty Sales Sages.
Welcome to the Salty Sales Sages podcast. I'm Greg Grimer.
And I'm Simon Stillwell. And today we are joined by Feargal O'Sullivan. Good to see you, Feargal.
How are you?
Very
Happy
well.
To be here. Yeah.
Feargal, for those that don't know him, is a serial entrepreneur. He currently is running two businesses, one called USAM Group, which is an outsourced sales agency for experienced AEs, or they hire experienced AEs and focused on the financial services industry. So work with a lot of startups and small clients, and actually some larger organizations too that want to use outsourced sales. And the second business is a company that he's launched recently, although it's been in stealth mode for a while, called Sales Slicer, which is, in my opinion, a really, really clever sales enablement tool that is perfect for sales managers and salespeople alike. And the reason why we've asked Feargal to come on the podcast is because A, of his experience in managing sales teams, and B, with his experience with building out Sales Slicer. He really understands the challenges associated with managing salespeople and handling their pipelines. Okay, the bane of everyone's life.
Yes.
Is that fair? Did I miss anything out, Feargal?
I think you got it great. Thank you, Simon.
Okay.
I'm delighted to be here.
All right, great. Well, let's just get straight in. So, given what I've just said, Feargal, what are the most common pitfalls sales managers fall into when managing their pipelines, and how can they avoid these mistakes? And there's a secondary point to that question, which is, do you see a difference as it pertains to smaller companies like startups and established businesses?
Do you mind if I start with the second part, Simon? No. Great, thank you. So, yeah, the difference between sort of earlier stage firms and established businesses is that often in an early stage, the company is unproven and the product is unproven, and maybe you don't even have a product market fit defined accurately yet. You've got hopefully something, right? But you're still perfecting that, and you're perfecting the messaging, and therefore, and even your pricing, by the way, is probably not even completely finalized and agreed to. So in those early stages, you need to expect a very different sales experience than you should selling widgets, for some well-established firm that everybody's heard of before. So I think the forecasting in particular is much, much more challenging for earlier stage companies than it is for more established ones. So making sure that your sales team truly understand the client's problem is going to be the most effective way of avoiding the pitfall of forecasting too aggressively, right? Like people tend to fall into one of two camps. They're either overly optimistic or overly pessimistic. And the best thing you can do as a sales manager is really question them on how well they understand their client and the particular use case that they're presenting the offering or the solution for. And stage would be another one, right? Which is sort of like, okay, we definitely understand that this is, a real problem for the client and it's causing them difficulties, which they want to address. And so for the salesperson trying to determine where am I in the process, then there's still a lot of steps that they have to go through, right? So have you done your initial presentation? Have you done a demonstration? Have you met with several different stakeholders? Do you know who the stakeholders are? Do you know who the decision makers are? Do you know that they have an approved budget or that they have to go through a budget process and so on? If you don't understand the client and their processes properly, then you will never know what sales stage you're at. And then again, you're just guessing. And then the other one, and this is one that really we focus on a lot at Sales Slicer, because we've been sort of tracking long-term enterprise solution sales, sort of the 6 to 18 month time frame type deal, right? At least 6 figures, maybe multiple 7-figure type deals. And what we have found to be one of the best determinants of the likelihood of closing a deal is how much time you've actually spent. So people, again, back to the pitfalls, people just being more aggressive about when they're expecting to close a deal. I seem, from my practice, I've felt that there are more positively optimistic salespeople. And I think you have to have that bone in your body because there's so much negativity. Most people spend most of the time telling you no. So if you can't be an optimistic person, you're probably not going to make it in this career.
Yeah, that's true.
So I think they tend to be more optimistic. If you get a sense of how long they've been able to spend working on this opportunity, not just how long it's been open, but how much time they've been putting in, that's a really, really powerful way of determining if that forecast is likely or not.
You're talking there about how many times have they spoken with them? How many meetings have they had? How many times have they done a demo of multiple meetings? Right,
Yeah.
okay.
And even beyond that, like we literally track how much time they spent doing those things. And it can even be just preparing for a meeting or preparing the proposal or, writing up a response to an objection that they presented in one of your last meetings.
I have a question here, which
Please,
is
Greg.
how
Yeah.
much homogeneity is there within a market with silo? Let's say, for example, you're selling legal systems to legal companies, and then you move to another silo. Do those rules about how long you have to spend in the process necessarily apply from silo to silo, or do they vary from silo to silo? Do they vary from
Uh,
size of legal company to size of legal company? In other words, how
yeah.
consistent are these things? Because you would know that, you've seen lots of data.
Yeah, so it's a great question, and I would think that I haven't seen every industry, of course, but in my experience, the process that firms follow, the sort of the procurement process that companies typically put you through is pretty well established now. 20, 30 years ago, people were buying, especially technology, they were buying things, just to get an advantage. We're going through the usual process. And you know what it is? It's the same across every company.
Yeah.
It's, have you got somebody who's going to be your champion? Will they introduce you to the other stakeholders? Will they bring in the technical people to evaluate and confirm that the product will actually meet the needs? Then will you go to procurement, who have to look at your company and your risk profile, and then will they bring you to the lawyers who are going to review all your contracts, and then of course there's negotiations probably with the CFO and other people. So the bigger thing for me and how long it's going to take you to close a deal is the size of the deal itself. Okay, so if I'm buying something for $100,000 worth of technology, or $10 million worth of technology, I am definitely doing further due diligence on the larger deal, right? That's going to have and you always have to realize that most of the things you sell, a lot of people don't recognize this because as a salesperson, especially if you're a young person in it and you're starting out and you go like, oh, it's only $100,000. I'm like, yeah, but it's about 4 to 5 times that for me to get your product to work in my organization. Small firms I've generally found not to be quicker at buying, and I think they're probably just more gun shy, so they're going to be a little bit cautious about committing to anything, and so they actually put you through a lot of the same processes as a medium-sized or a large firm will.
I mean, one of the things you've touched on is data, right? So there are two things that always used to drive me crazy. Well, there are way more than two things, but I
I
used
was
to
going
have
to say, like,
hell
you're lucky
before
then,
we
huh?
did it. And one of them obviously is what you were talking about earlier, right? Accuracy of the pipeline, the forecast, cleaning it up, all that kind of stuff. The other thing is data quality, right? So it is never more true that CRM systems are useful if they have good quality data in them, and they're utterly useless if they have just garbage in them, right? So I mean, I'm imagining that you agree with me that having accurate data is healthy and essential. But what steps can businesses take to ensure that they do actually have accurate and consistent data and good data hygiene, in your view, right? Because everyone suffers from this problem.
They
I've got an
do,
additional question there. Are there
yeah.
any steps you can take that make it in the salesperson's interest to do that, rather than just being a chore they're going to get disciplined for if they don't do.
Yes, that's
I
ideal.
love how you put that add on there, Greg.
Yeah.
So look, the bottom line is that most CRMs are full of junk, and I feel the worst for the really good salespeople who actually use the system well. So we used to warn them on a Tuesday morning that we were going to pull the forecast, the pipeline on Friday evening. And then we would, so please update all your forecasts. And this is not even, by the way, make sure the company name and address is still accurate or the contact name and address. This was just like, tell me whether you think the deal that you're forecasting to close on such a date is going to close on that date. So I had to send 4 people around to sit with each of them at their computer, log into their instance of Salesforce, and then pull up the thing and ask them one by one, you have this forecast for this quarter. How confident are you? And then they would go, 30%, 50%, whatever it is, right? And then they would do all that. And then on Friday evening, they would hopefully have visited all the salespeople. Myself and the sales operations manager would export it into Excel, because it's a little bit annoying trying to play around inside the CRM, especially when you have a couple of hundred deals. And we go like, this guy's, no way this deal's closing. Now that one looks good, and they're sandbagging, let's boost it up. Or, yeah, maybe push this one out of date, or, whatever, change the stage. And, based on just our anecdotal knowledge of what's going on, not even from going into Salesforce to see have they got a good note or a good activity. I would say that 9 out of 10 firms, and I'm probably being generous to say that 10% have it right. I would say, but let's be generous and say 10% of the people are doing it well, 90 are doing it wrong. So that's the first thing, is that salespeople are not putting it in well. The second thing is that a lot of firms are trying to patch it, right? And there are hundreds of companies that have built add-on products that allow you to patch the data. So you're like, okay, this data is not really particularly good. So we're going to try to use some kind, maybe AI. They're all using AI now, but great. But if the salespeople aren't doing it, then it's not going to be good. So you've got to help the salespeople and make them want to put the data in accurately. So what we do at USAM Group, and we use Sales Slicer for this, is we do 2 things. First of all, we absolutely insist, it's not an option, we insist that they actually track all of their activities. Our salespeople have to put it in, okay? So that's sort of a cultural thing. And we give them some help with that, right? So if you had a phone call with a client, you can just click the button and say, enter phone call for my meeting with Greg where we discussed sales opportunities, and you just chat, and then you hit the button and it creates a note for you, right? And then you hit submit. And the second thing we do then is we actually have a sales operations team that actually review and approve everything. So the salesperson can put in whatever they want, but if it doesn't get approved, it doesn't count.
Yeah.
So now we actually have some level of confidence in the quality of the data, right? But we also have product people review it, and now we have people that actually go, I know what's going on at these accounts. So now you're actually tying the product team into the sales team, and they're actually able to come back and be productive at helping the salespeople, right? And then the third thing is that now with all of this insight, we actually have a really good sort of dashboard, a map of how each deal's going. Looking again, as Simon, as you sort of said, like how many meetings and communications and demos, and how long you spent, and how long it's been open, and who you've met with, and what the trend is like in terms of activity on the account. And we look at these things, and now we're able to go back and help the salesperson further to say, I'm looking at this and I see what we're missing, some contacts that we need to add on here, or we haven't demonstrated it to enough people. The final option is if you have people putting in content and you're reviewing and approving it, you can bonus them for doing a great job, and you'll be amazed at how people like it to, you could earn an extra, I don't know, 10 grand a year or 20 grand, whatever way you want to do it. You will get people doing so, and then you will have accurate data, then you will be more helpful to help them close more deals, and then they will get a higher commission because they will close more deals.
It's kind of sad though that we have to do that sort of thing, offer incentives to do your bloody job. Right?
Exactly.
And the fact is that salespeople really benefit from having accurate data on their own opportunities in the CRM system. I think the problem comes back, honestly, to a lot of CRM systems are so complicated, right?
Yes.
There's so many things you have to do.
Yep.
So, for instance, not that we want to be nasty about Salesforce at all, because it is an amazing tool, but I consider it a little bit like the difference between an iPhone and an Android phone, right? People like me who are dummies, we like to use an iPhone because it just works and it's not very customizable. It just works, right?
Yeah.
Whereas geeky technical people like to use an Android because they can make it do all kinds of clever things. And Salesforce is very much like that. And the problem is when people in the company start to get hold of it, so finance gets hold of all the things they can do with it, then it gets out of control. And now all of a sudden the salesperson, in order to move anything forward, has got to fill out 15, 20, 25 different fields and check all this sort of stuff. And then they are spending the classic that we hear all the time, third of their time doing that stuff. That's when CRMs go badly wrong, in my opinion. Sorry, we talked a little bit about AI, Feargal.
Yeah.
And I know that Sales Slicer uses AI, and you were talking about these other systems. So, where is AI, in your view, useful to actually help with pipelines, both entering the data and managing them?
Sure. Well, okay, so the entering the data is simple. So things like, scraping your email and your calendar and so on, right? And making sure that you're capturing everything that you've done. Also just cleaning up your notes, not losing the critical data. And by the way, I just wanted to really highlight that point you made about how valuable the CRM can be for yourself as a salesperson, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I'm working on 18-month deals, sometimes longer. How am I supposed to I can't remember what I had for breakfast, and you're asking me to remember what the name of the connector between the database and the web server. I'd gone. But super valuable. Like I can look it up just before I go into my next meeting. Oh yeah, they're using these, and then that tool, and they have an IBM here and a Microsoft there. Brilliant. And now I go in and the guy goes, "Excuse you remember everything about me?" And I'm like, I completely forgot it until 5 minutes ago. But I had tagged it as important that I was going to read this note before I saw you again. I remember it all now. It's like typing down the person's family names and things like that, and what school their kids went to. It just goes such a long way in a meeting when you show that you paid attention, even though you don't really remember. You just looked it up before you went to the meeting. The other thing is just mathematically, too many forecasts are finger in the air. Which way is the wind? Is that deal going to? Like I said, we were literally just looking at him on Excel, going, what do you think? That salesperson always over exaggerates, or I know that client and they never buy anything. How about we just look at it mathematically? Now, again, a lot of the bigger companies are doing this just by going, what's our typical and what do we normally see for forecasting? 100%, we normally close 30. Okay, then we'll just forecast 30 again. But smaller firms and earlier stage firms don't have that history to lean on. But you don't want the sales manager subjectively selecting the opportunities that are good or not. And that's where AI can play a major role, because you can honestly look mathematically at what it typically takes to close similar types of deals. I think good sales managers have a feel for them, but again, it's still subjective. How about we give me some objective view, and I might overrule it because I say, no, I was at that lunch. The salesperson said it was great, but I didn't feel it was great.
Feargal, thank you very much for your time appearing today.
I appreciate chatting with you.
See
You
ya.
old balls. You're the only one with hair, Feargal.
Not when I turn around, okay? I'm gonna keep this face, then I look great.